1, live.
Fantastic. Hopefully everyone can see us okay. Welcome to the Joe Dale webinar in collaboration with Education Perfect and EP. We're absolutely delighted that you're all with us. Can you just let us know via the Q&A that you can hear us okay? We had a bit of an issue this morning, New Zealand time, or last night UK time. Can you just let us know if you can hear us and see us? That'll be fantastic just to know. We've got lots of people joining us this evening. It's going to be a packed session. It's going to be a combination of myself doing the first few minutes as a presentation, and I'll be handing over to Philippa Kruger, who's with us this evening as part of EP, and she'll be going through lots of different ways in which we can use EP for promoting speaking. So I'm going to give a little bit of context, particularly from the UK context, but lots of the ideas will be relevant for everybody who's with us. We've got a real mix of people from literally all over the world, which is amazing. And it seems that people can all hear us and see us, which is lovely. As I said, we had a bit of a technical issue, which I'm sure Philippa will go into more detail in a minute, but it's fantastic. We're very relieved that everyone can see and hear us. So you're very welcome. And I'm going to hand over to Philippa now to go through the housekeeping, but we're absolutely delighted that you're all here, and it's going to be a fantastic presentation all around speaking under COVID classroom situation. Over to you, Philippa.
Hi, thank you so much, Joe, and it's absolutely wonderful. You have no idea how happy I am to see that people can hear us. It's wonderful. Our whole webinar platform went down this morning in the other session, and I was so looking forward to it because it's a topic that's really dear to my heart, and I was really excited about it. And then when we couldn't run it, I was just really gutted. So it's really making me so happy to see that you guys can hear us and see us. It's wonderful. So thank you, Joe, for joining us. We've also got our wonderful Dia online with us as well from Education Perfect, who many of you will know, and she's going to be answering questions in the Q&A. So before we launch into it, I'm just going to go through a few housekeeping things. Now, if you've been in a webinar with us before, you would have heard this before, so sorry for the repetition, but those of you who are new will just go through this quite quickly. So you can move the windows around on the screen in front of you as much as you wish. There are links in the bio section on the left-hand side if you want to get in touch with us via LinkedIn or Twitter or email. And we've also got a resource list that you'll find on your screen in front of you. And this has got links to all sorts of useful things. We've got links to our EP Facebook EP Languages Facebook group, which is, if you're not a member already, it's a really great place to sort of join other teachers using EP. We share lots of updates in there. We share case studies, we share ideas, and we'd really love for it to become a place where teachers are sharing as well. And it is beginning to, lots of teachers are beginning to share in there a bit more, which is really awesome. So if you're not a member already, please join that group. I've also got a link to Joe's mailing list on our resource list as well. So if you'd like to get updates from Joe about all the stuff that he's up to, please click on that to sign up there. And Joe does amazing workshops in PD with teachers all around the world and with all sorts of things related to language learning. So I'd encourage you to sign up for that. There's also links to our EP site and our help centre and a few other bits and pieces in the resources list. Also, if you're on Twitter, we'd love for you to tweet during the session and just put what you're learning about in the session, hashtag EP for Learning, hashtag Joe Dale. That would be wonderful. It would be great to see some tweets out there. And as Joe said, if you've got questions throughout the session, please pop those in the Q&A box. There is a group chat which we won't be using, but if you can use the Q&A area, and either I'll address the questions as I'm talking, and Joe likewise will address questions, but we've also got Dia online who'll be answering questions. She'll be responding to written questions in there. So, and then we'll also have some Q&A time at the end where we'll discuss some of the questions that have come up throughout the session that might be relevant for everyone. So please pop any questions in the Q&A area. And at the end of the webinar, you'll be able to click on the certificate icon at the bottom of the screen and download a certificate to show your attendance in the webinar today. If you found the session useful, useful, you can click on the link to send it to a colleague. So you just fill out the box, send this webinar, and that will actually send the link to a colleague to register. And likewise, you'll receive a recording tomorrow after the event. So we'll send out a recording with some other useful resources following the session today. So thank you again for joining us. As Joe said, we're going to be talking about speaking, some of the challenges that we have at the moment with COVID restrictions, whether that's still teaching remotely, or teaching in a blended learning environment, or with sort of social distancing restrictions in the classroom. And what we're going to do is Joe's first of all going to give a bit of context around that, and then I'm going to sort of jump in and show how you can use EP in all sorts of ways to help with speaking across all the different learning situations that you might find yourself in. So to start with, we're going to start with a poll just to get an idea of where people are sort of at in their teaching at the moment. And we'd like you to just have a look at the question. Choose a statement that best describes your current situation. So are you still teaching fully remotely, or maybe do you have students who are rostered in on certain days so that there's only a limited number of people in the classroom at a time and then the rest working from home? Or do you have most students back on campus but with strict rules around interaction and social distancing? Or are you back to an on-campus teaching and learning where interaction and group work and speaking is allowed? And we'd love to sort of get a picture of where schools are at, and we do have, people literally from all over the world this evening. So it's really, or this morning, depending on where you are in the world. And so it'd be great to kind of get a picture on where you are. And I think I forgot to introduce myself at the start. So while you were filling out the poll, just to give you a bit of background about myself. So I'm the Global Head of Languages here at EP. Before joining the EP team, I was a French teacher for many years at various schools around New Zealand. And my role is really varied at EP. So I'm responsible for our languages product, but also spend a lot of time working with teachers like yourselves in all sorts of areas. And as well as that, I'm also mum to 3 small girls. So I can identify with all of you out there who are parents as well, and the struggle of juggling teaching and parenting. And I know it's very real and very challenging, especially this year with all the kind of challenges that we've had. So that's a bit about me, and really excited to be working with you today. And I hope that you can all take away something from the sessions. So I'm going to hand back over to Joe, but before I do that, we'll just put up the poll results. So looks like we've got a real combination. So still a lot of people who are still teaching fully remotely, some who are rostered in, some teachers who are back on campus but with strict social distancing. So I've got a real mix. So hopefully in the session we're going to have something for all of you to take away to all of your different situations. And I think what I really would love to highlight in the session is how you can use EP as a tool that can be used across all these different situations, because I think that going forward it's going to be a bit of a roller coaster. Who knows what's going to happen, but hopefully I think EP can be a constant tool across all the different situations we're going to find ourselves in. So I'll hand back over to Joe, and then I'll be with you sort of later in the session.
Fantastic. Thanks ever so much, Philippa. That's lovely. So I'll give you a little bit of an introduction about myself as well. So I'm a former languages teacher. I taught French for 13 years at secondary school level for 3 years, and then 10 years at middle school level on the Isle of Wight, which is where I still live, which if you don't know where that is, it's in the south of the UK, about 25 minutes via ferry from Southampton, which is where the Titanic launched many, many years ago. And for the last 10 years, I've been an independent languages consultant. I've worked with EP many times over the years, and I'm delighted to be involved in this collaboration with EP for this webinar today, and then the webinar that we did a few weeks ago as well. So to start off with, what I thought would be a useful idea is to give you a little bit of context around speaking ideas in relation to the UK in particular, but I think a lot of the ideas are relevant to other places, absolutely. And I've been very much inspired by the MFL Twitterati community, which, if you don't know, is a community of language teachers, language consultants, and language organisations from the UK and from Ireland. But the hashtag MFL Twitterati, which is MFLTWITTERATI, that's been used around the world by language teachers from here, there, and everywhere for many, many years now. So if you haven't heard of it, I would really encourage you to check it out And if you were just to do a search for MFL Twitterati plus speaking, you would get lots of ideas that are applicable to languages classroom, particularly in the COVID situation we find ourselves at the moment. So, Philippa, I can't see my first slide. Should I click on this slide and then send to audience, or can you bring up the slide for me, or what do you suggest?
Yeah, it's all good. It's there, Joe. So it's
okay.
live.
It's just I can't see it. That's fine. Okay, so that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, so as you can see on that on the slide that you can see right now, this is possibly the type of classroom that some of you are seeing. In other words, you've got that sort of yellow and black line right at the front, and the suggestion here is that in a COVID classroom, you probably don't have the option of walking around the classroom. So you have to, basically teach from the front, and as a result of that, it makes it very difficult to do pair work and group work activities, and then also the issue around droplets and passing on the virus. If you are able to be in your classroom, if you're not teaching remotely, then how do we get around that? How do we find ways in which we can still do speaking practice? And obviously, Philippa's going to talk about EP, but I just thought I would start off by that graphic. This graphic was created by a former head teacher, Tom Sherrington, who's known as Teacher Head on Twitter, and you can see that's his blog post. And it'd be interesting to know maybe in the Q&A on how similar that is to your experience, because it's quite a shocking image in a way. Obviously, naturally, teachers want to move around the classroom, want to help students in that way, but it's just very difficult at the moment. And thank goodness, at the same time, we have the opportunity, certainly in the UK, to go back to school, but we've got to make sure it's as safe as possible. Okay, can we go on to the next slide, please, Philippa, if that's okay? Fantastic, thank you. Okay, so, is that all right? Okay,
yeah,
so yeah, lovely. So the slide you should be seeing now, this is a member of the MFL Twitterati, who is Esmeralda Salgado, who is head of languages at King's Ely School in Cambridge. She's been incredible during the pandemic. She's been sharing lots and lots of ideas around how you can use technology to enhance language teaching. She's also done a webinar for the Association for Language Learning, which is a UK-based subjects association for languages, similar to the equivalent of the NZALT in New Zealand or the AFMLTA in Australia, or if we have anyone from the States, the equivalent of ACFL. I can see, Paula, you can't see the slide. Is that right? Can you not see the slide on my screen? Maybe, I'm not sure where that is. Can we just let... Okay, so I see a couple of you can't see the slides. Okay, never mind. So you'll get the presentation anyway afterwards. So that's okay. I can carry on talking, and it will make sense when I'm sure we can combine this together with the slideshow. So as I was saying, Esmeralda Salgado has been absolutely fantastic, and she's written a lot of blog posts around ideas of using technology in the languages classroom during lockdown. This particular one is around speaking, and she suggests some activities that can be done in a COVID secure classroom. Okay, so some of you can see the slides and some of you can't. Never mind, I'll just carry on. So her blog is mflcraft.blogspot.com, mflcraft, so mflcraft.blogspot.com. And it's a treasure trove of interesting ideas. And in that, she goes through different examples of activities that she feels would work in a COVID-safe environment, which is why I've suggested that in the presentation. If you could go on to the next slide, please, Philippa, that's all right. The next one is from a lady called Janet Lloyd, who is the person behind the network known in the UK as the PLN, which stands for Primary Languages Network, and that's a network based in the northwest of England, and it's essentially designed to support teachers in the northwest on providing primary languages, because primary languages have been compulsory in the UK, or in England, should I say, as of 2014, and so Janet does an amazing job in helping support primary languages, and she has lots of people who work for her as peripatetic teachers that go in and do primary languages with the children at primary age, which is wonderful. And she produces a podcast, which you can find if you do a search for PLN podcast or Primary Languages Network podcast. And a couple of days ago, she did a video version. It's normally audio only. This is the first video podcast that she's done. And you can see it's all about speaking and singing in a primary languages classroom. But again, you could take the ideas and replicate them in a secondary school environment. Or I know there are some people who are teaching primary here as well, which is great. And she gives some suggestions, for example, taking the children outside so that you have social distancing. If you're in a warm country, like in Malaysia or in Australia, then that's going to be easier. Or New Zealand, that's going to be easier to do. In the UK, it's a bit more problematic, I think. But or you could, if you're allowed to, you could go into the school hall and do activities there. So she's suggesting ideas around drama in the languages classroom for practicing speaking. And she also suggests things like getting a mirror and holding it up in front of your mouth so you can see that you're speaking, but maybe you're speaking either very quietly or even that you're doing sort of silent speaking, you're mouthing the words out. And by doing that, it's helping to reinforce the words in your brain, as it were, because you're physically making the action of what it would be if you were saying the word, but you're not actually saying it. So a few suggestions there, but it's about a half an hour recording. I'd really encourage you to have a look. In the next slide, if you could go to that one, if that's possible. This is, as you can see, we've got the question at the top there about what are the latest guidelines for speaking from the government, or what are we supposed to do in the languages classroom. And you can see that Steve Smith, who's probably well known to a lot of you, SP Smith 45 on Twitter, and he said, as far as I know, there's no official guidance at the moment. But Claire Seckham, who's known as Bally Secco on Twitter, again, you've got the names of everyone on that slide. She contacted the government and asked them specifically about the guidance on speaking and singing in the languages classroom. Claire's a primary languages specialist, so she does lots of songs. And surprise, surprise, no guidance was forthcoming. Now, the cynical side of me suggests that the reason for that is because if the government did give explicit guidance, they would be liable if something were to go wrong, or there was evidence that teachers had followed the guidance and that it had caused a lot of children to become sick with the virus, which is very disappointing, I think. But there we are. And Claire actually contacted the government and got if we go to the next slide, if that's okay, contacted the government and got this sort of like really sort of, general response, general answer to the question. And really all that the government was doing, or the spokesperson, was adding a link to general advice around the coronavirus, as opposed to, or guidance to schools, should I say, as opposed to directly answering the question around speaking. So Claire's assumption as a result of that is it's down to the head teacher or the principal to put together a risk assessment, and then if the staff are allowed to do the sorts of activities that we're talking about, I'm talking about here, then that's okay. But each individual school has to check their risk assessment, which makes sense. But it's just a real shame in this crisis at the moment that we don't get explicit instruction from the government. Claire has also written a blog post, which is the next slide along, I think. And in that blog post, she is giving, again, some ideas and suggestions on what you can do in the COVID classroom. But she does make it very clear that she's not a health professional. She's a teacher. So it goes without saying that each individual teacher reading the blog post must check with the school with their risk assessment and be mindful of the fact that that Claire is not a health professional. She's just giving common sense advice, which is fantastic. So as you can see, hopefully we're on that slide now, it says that the new normal classroom. And then on the right-hand side, she's also shared a blog post around some ideas around speaking practice using, in this case, a PowerPoint, and she's shared some resources with you. But of course, we're going to be looking at how EP can be used for speaking. And then on the last slide, if that's okay, I think that's the last slide I was going to talk about. We have a couple of one blog post there, which I've just divided into two separate pictures. And I just thought that this was a particularly interesting one. This came up on my radar a couple of days ago, which is the suggestion that when we're talking about speaking in general in the languages classroom, what we're talking about is trying to reduce the amount of droplets that people are producing, which is why it's, in my opinion, very important to wear masks to reduce that. If the children are not wearing masks, then if they're speaking face-to-face, if one of them has the virus, it's going to be something like 90% chance of transmission, whereas if both children are wearing a mask and they're a metre or 2 metres away from each other, which I appreciate is not possible in lots of classrooms, but if that were the case, then it would reduce the risk dramatically. So anyway, in this article, it's suggesting that in English, if you speak the English language, then that's actually more likely to produce more droplets to do with the, I know I've got the text on the screen, but I can't actually see it because it's too small at the moment, but it's talking about essentially there's more, you produce more droplets if you speak in English, which I thought was quite funny, compared to other languages. So as we're all teaching different languages, probably I would imagine, unless there are some EAL specialists in the session right now, then that's a good thing and something to be mindful of as well. So that's a little bit of context about where we're at. It'd be lovely to know in the Q&A if that's similar to your experience, which is why we did the poll at the beginning, and we got some interesting data from there. But without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Philippa now, and she'll be able to show us lots of ways in which we can use EP to address lots of the challenges that I've referred to and challenges in general around promoting speaking in the COVID-safe or COVID-secure classroom. Over to you, Philippa. Thanks ever so much.
Hi everyone. Can you hear me okay? Hopefully you can all hear me. So thank you, Joe. Thank you for that that introduction. It was really it's really insightful to hear sort of various what's happening in various places around the world. I mean, obviously here in New Zealand, especially outside of Auckland, we're very lucky with where we're at now. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump in and show you how various different ideas in EP, because I know we've got people who may not have used EP before, and then we've got some very experienced users with us as well. I'm going to show sort of various different ways that you can use EP to support student speaking, and we're going to look at some of our sort of existing pre-built speaking activities, but also at sort of ways, this is something I've really enjoyed thinking about, is ways that we can sort of reimagine some of our traditional speaking activities in the classroom and try and rework them in EP so that you could use them in a remote learning situation, or if you can't do speaking activities in the classroom. So what I'm going to do is jump into screen share mode now, and I'm just very briefly going to give a bit of an introduction of what EP Languages is, and sort of a 1-minute introduction for those of you who aren't aware. So basically, we're an online learning program. We offer a full range of resources for language learning. We have listening comprehension, reading comprehension, writing, speaking, grammar, vocabulary, plus lots of different facilities for setting homework tasks, setting assessments, for giving feedback. So we offer a lot, but I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail into all the other aspects of our content, so we are focusing on speaking. But if you are interested, if you don't have an account for EP, if you don't have a teacher account, what I'm going to do is just pop up a URL where you can register for a free teacher account. So that will be there while I'm in screen share mode. So I'm going to go into screen share mode now, and hopefully in a couple of seconds you'll see my EP control panel screen. So when you go to EP and you log in, you arrive at what we call the control panel. So this is like our home page. So what I'm going to show you first is some of our pre-built speaking activities, and many of you will have seen these before, many of you won't. So I'm going to spend a few minutes just showing you what's readily available without any preparation from you as a teacher. So if you go into the content library, and you can see we've got the list of languages down the left-hand side. Now the speaking activities that we have available pre-made are available for French, German, Japanese, Chinese, Spanish, Māori, Arabic, and Indonesian, and Italian. I don't think I've missed any there. However, I'm also going to show, for teachers of other languages, I'm going to show plenty of ideas as how you can use the EP platform to create various kinds of speaking activities as well. So what we do is we click on the language of your choice, so I'm just going to click on French to show as an example, but all the activities I show are available, or similar versions are available in all the languages I mentioned. I'm also going to turn my video off now while I'm in screen share, because I think if I turn the video off, it makes the screen share area a bit bigger. So I'll turn that off now. When you go into the language of your choice, you can see we've got this area called the featured content area. And this is where we have our EP languages core material, and we call it our languages in action program. And you can see there's 4 different levels: getting started, beginner, intermediate, and advanced. And I'd encourage you, if you haven't looked at these, to have a really good look and see, you know, which levels might suit your students. But very sort of a rough overview: getting started is very much for primary level or early secondary, beginner for early secondary, intermediate for mid-secondary, and advanced for senior secondary. So if I go into one of these levels, you can see there's a series of topic-based units, and within here there's many different lessons covering all the skills that I mentioned. So of course the key language learning skills. And within each of the units we've got a speaking lesson. Now in the speaking lesson we start out with some pronunciation activities. And I'm actually going to show you what this looks like from a student perspective, so you can see what the student is experiencing when they're working through these. So I'm just going to click on more here and go try in the student zone. And this is taking me through to what the students will see. And what happens is they come up and they've got a list of words there. They can listen to the words to get a preview of them, so they can hear what they sound like. And then they can go through, listen to all the words, and click on continue when they're ready. They then do a quick microphone check. The browser will ask them to allow their microphone. And then what they can do is they can record. They press the space bar to record themselves saying the word. And what happens is it will play back their recording, and it will also play a model answer recorded by a native speaker. So they can compare their recording with the native speaker recording, and they can do that as many times as they like, really drilling that pronunciation. And they can work through these at their own pace, and it can be done in the classroom if you're allowed to be doing speaking activities. It can be done at home. It could be done even outside. Joe mentioned sort of taking students outside and spreading them out in a wider space. It could be done outside, but it could be really done anywhere. And they've got that listening, they've got that modeling of the pronunciation to compare it to and really work on their pronunciation. We then have the next section of our lessons is called Read Out Loud. And once again, it's focusing on pronunciation, but students read, it's more sentence level rather than word level. And they read the sentence, they record themselves reading the sentence, and then they compare their answer to a model answer again. And there's a series of those statements that they read out loud and compare. We then have a section which is called Answer the Question. And what happens here is they listen to the question in the target language. They can slow it down if they want to. And then they record their answer in the target language. And so this is really preparing them for more conversational activities. Obviously, it's not the same as having a conversation, but it's building up their confidence to have a conversation in the target language. So there's a series of questions there that they listen to the question and record their answer. And then we've got the flip side of that, where they listen to an answer and they've got to record the question that might generate that answer. So it's really helping them to practice those conversational skills and build their confidence. And the great thing about these, and it's probably one of my the speaking questions and combined with the feedback capabilities, is probably one of my favorite parts of the platform, because as a teacher, you can actually go in and you can listen to what the students have recorded, and you can give feedback, and you can give verbal feedback on what they've recorded. And I'll show you how to do that shortly. Then the final section is some either monologue questions where the students are recording themselves talking about aspects of the topic, and then some conversation activities where they record a conversation with a friend. Now, obviously, the conversation with a friend is a little bit harder if you're working remotely, but it does actually work in a Zoom breakout room. Dia and I actually tested it the other day. So you can put the students into the Zoom breakout rooms and have them recording through EP, and it works really well. So, but all of these activities can be done, as I said, anywhere, where that works for you. And the great thing about it is if they're not doing it in the classroom, you can still track it and you can listen to what they've recorded and you can give them feedback. So what I'm going to do is show you how you can do that tracking now. So I'm going to come out of here and I'm going to go back to the teacher zone. And what we recommend is if you are going to assign a speaking lesson, that you set it as a task. And I'm not going to go into the details of this, but just to sort of show you briefly what you do to set a lesson as a task is you just click on this assign button and it takes you through to our task manager area, and you can choose the class that you want to assign it to, and you set the dates, and then you can click on assign task. And we recommend using that task feature because it helps students to find the lesson, but it also helps you to track it. So when you assign a speaking lesson or any lesson as a task, you can then, from your control panel, you can then go into the tasks and homework area, and you can find it, and it will come up with a little panel here where you can see what the students have done. And then because I haven't set any here, I'm going to show you a sample report of what that looks like. And here you can get an overview of what the students have done. You can get some insights. You get a breakdown of the whole lesson, whatever lesson that might be. And if it's green, it means the students have completed it. If there's an exclamation mark, they're having difficulty. If it's white, it means they haven't done it. And that's great in itself for giving you that formative data, for showing you areas where students might need more support, and where you might need to focus on different aspects. But then what you can do if you go to the responses tab down the left-hand side is you can actually go in and listen to what the students have recorded. So you can see the list of students down the left-hand side. Then you can access the recording here, clicking on the play button to listen to the recording, and then you can give the feedback over here on the right-hand side. So you can either give written feedback or you can click here to record feedback. And I know I've seen in various places on social media, teachers have said that in periods of lockdown and remote learning, that the recorded feedback is really valuable for the students, especially when it comes to speaking, but also just the written feedback as well is really encouraging for them. So it's a great way of tracking the student speaking, especially if you're not able to sort of listen to them in the classroom, see them live, or if you've got those restrictions. It's a great way for them to still keep up their speaking, and for you to give them feedback and all those kinds of things. So those are our pre-built speaking activities and how you can give feedback on them. So then what I'm going to look at now is also how you can create different kinds of speaking activities. So obviously we've got a very wide selection of pre-built speaking activities, but you can also create speaking activities very easily on EP. And to do that, what you need to do is go back into the content library, and then what you need to do is just make sure you're over in edit mode. So over on the right-hand side, there's this little edit button, and if I click on this one, then it takes you into this EP Studio zone. And EP Studio is our new content creation tools. And some of you may be familiar with how EP Studio works, and some of you may not. And it's actually really, it's a really easy process now to create content using the EP Studio tools. So we're going to focus on creating speaking lessons and the different kinds of speaking activities you can create. But if you are interested in learning more about EP Studio, I do run regular webinars showing how EP Studio works with different kinds of questions for language learning. So today's focus is on speaking, but please look out for upcoming webinars on sort of more general EP Studio focus. So what we do is when we come into the edit mode, we then click on this My Content area at the top. So it's a folder at the top, and this is where you can be working on creating your own content, and it's private to you while you're still in that creation process. Then you can share it when you're ready to share it. So if we click on the My Content folder, make sure you're in the correct subject area at the top. And then I'm going to show you mainly how to create in a SMART lesson, but this can also be used as a speaking assessment as well. So it can be either for a more formative task or for a summative assessment task. So I'm going to click on SMART lesson, and it comes up with kind of like an index for our SMART lesson, and there's a couple of different sections in a lesson. We've got information sections, which are for presenting new information. We have a quiz section, which is for automatically marked questions, and we have the extended response section, which is for long answer questions or questions that require teacher feedback or a model answer. So for the speaking questions, we're going to focus on this extended response section. So it's important we put speaking questions into the one with the blue circle. So we're just going to click on add question, and then we're going to click on build your own question. And it comes up with this blank canvas space, and this is essentially your question area. And then how it works is you can drag any of the components from the left-hand side here into your canvas. So for a start, for most questions, you'd probably always start out with a text box, and so all you need to do is drag the text box over and then put in your instructions. So the most basic kind of speaking question you can make is simply record yourself talking about such and such. And of course, you can put the instructions in any language. I'm putting them in English just because it's a generic language for that we all understand, I'm assuming, in the session. But if you can put your instructions in whichever target language you're teaching. So for example, record yourself talking about your house in French, for example, and you can put whatever instructions you like in there with regards to what you want them to record. You can then change your text by clicking on the different formatting tools above, and then all you need to do is drag over this audio recording component, which is down the bottom here with the little microphone, drag it into the question space. We've got a choice of a quick recording or an extended recording. The quick recording allows students to record up to 30 seconds. The extended recording allows them to record up to 10 minutes. The quick recording also allows a model answer, so that's quite good for pronunciation activities, whereas the extended recording doesn't. So for an open-ended one, I would generally choose extended recording. So click on that, click on done, and there you've got your speaking question. That's all you need to do. It's the most basic one, so you can see very, very quick to make. I obviously spent a bit of time explaining all those steps, but when you're doing it yourself, it would probably take you 2 minutes to whip one of those up. And then if we preview that, that's what the students would see. They see the instruction, they click on the red record button, and they record in. They can then listen back to what they've recorded, and they can re-record if they want to, and when they're ready, they can submit to you to listen to. So once again, like our pre-built activities, this can be assigned to the students to work on either in the classroom if that's appropriate for your particular setting, or they can work on it remotely from home, and then you can listen into what they've recorded. So some variations on that. That's one way you can make a really simple speaking question. Some different variations on the theme is you can add in an image. So all you do to add in an image is drag over this image icon from the left-hand side and drag it over into the question area. And you can either upload an image or you can pick from our media gallery. Now we have a really extensive media gallery available. So I'd recommend having a look to see if you can find something in there. So if we pick from the media gallery and I sort of search for house, for example, you can see we've got a lot of different images that come up. You can choose the image that you like. Then you just can play around with the size a little bit and just type in some numbers in there and see and it will preview, and you can see what size looks good. And then you can either just have the image there to make it look nice, or you can actually link your instructions to the image. So you could say something along the lines of record yourself describing this image in French. And then it becomes more of a response question. So that's another sort of variation on how you can use a speaking question. The next kind of question I'm going to show you, and I'm showing you this all in one one slide just because I'm aware of time and we don't have a huge amount of time. But what you can do is make individual questions with all these different questions in it as well. But I'm just sort of showing you all the variations here. You can also put in, like you saw, we had our spontaneous conversation speaking practice questions, which I showed earlier. These are also really easy to make. So if I get rid of the image here and I change my instructions slightly and say, listen to this question and record your answer in French or German or Japanese or Chinese, etc. And then what I can do is drag over an audio icon into here, and I can record my voice recording the question. So you just click on record your voice. You record the question. So for example, if I wanted to say, what did you eat for breakfast as a question, and the student's got to answer in the target language. So, qu'est-ce que tu as mangé au petit déjeuner? I stop, you can play it back, you can use the audio, and you can even limit the number of playbacks in the audio. You can take out the ability to pause if you want to when the students are listening to it. Click on done, and there you've got the question there as well. So the students will listen to that and then record their answer. So it's similar to what we saw in the pre-built ones. So you can see that as well is very quick to make. Literally takes a minute or two to make it, and there it's therefore a question for your students to answer, so practicing their conversational skills. And then a little trick with our EP Studio tools is sometimes if I preview this, you can see it's a little bit close together. So what I'd recommend doing to add in a bit of extra space is just dragging over a extra text box in there, and that just adds a bit of extra space into it. And then that looks a bit better when it's in the preview and that's what the students would see. So that's a more conversational style question you can make. So sort of looking at what you can do with these kinds of questions and how you could use them. As I said, you can use these across the different environments, so either in the classroom, remotely, outside if you need to be, in a Zoom breakout room. They'll work in all sorts of ways. And you can also use them as an assessment through our platform. So you can actually set any of our speaking questions as a speaking assessment. And I'll show you how you can do that. So say I wanted this to be a speaking assessment, I could save it, and I'll show you now the process for saving the lesson. So we click on Save Question, we give it a name, so we'll just call that Speaking Question 1, and then we click on Exit the Content Editor, so we'll save it again, and there you can see our questions come up there in our lesson. And so what we want to do is save the lesson now. So of course you can put in more questions, you can keep adding in questions, and you can add in additional material up here as well. And if you're keen to learn more about what you can put into a lesson, then definitely come to one of our EP Studio webinars, which will be coming up soon, and we'll make sure we advertise that. Then we just give the lesson a name, so we'll call it Speaking Lesson, for example, and save it. And then if we exit the preview here, you can see that's come up in the My Content area. So if I want to, or I can leave it there and I can actually assign it from here. So I can right click on it and either assign it as a homework task, which is what we talked about before, where students where they can find the task and they can complete it and you can give feedback. Or you can also click on Assess Your Students, and this actually sets it up as a more formal assessment. It's actually a very similar experience for the student side of things when they go to do the speaking assessment, because it will appear very similar to the task, but it means you can actually give it a mark rather than just a comment. So that's another option to use it as a speaking assessment. So you can actually have students completing speaking assessments from home if you can't run them in the classroom, and it works really, really well. So it could be any kind of speaking assessment. It could be conversational questions. It could be getting the students to record a speech, for example. If you're unable to do that, regardless of your situation, you can set up a speech task. And to do that, all you would need to do is set up a speaking question like I showed you, and then the task would just be, record a speech about this topic. They would record into the platform, and there you have their speech assessment. So it can either be used as a task or an assessment. The other option we have, which is, I think, could be a really powerful way of using the platform when you don't have when you can't have students sort of speaking together in the classroom, is using our peer review function. So I'm going to have a look at the peer review function as well. And I know I'm going through these things really, really fast. So if there are ideas that you think, oh, I'd really love to know more about that, we're very happy to sort of run follow-up sessions with you. Please just reach out. And we can book in a time for that. We've got actually a number of language teachers on our team who'd be more than happy to work with you. Depending on where you are in the world, we sort of have people allocated to each region. So yes, I know I'm going fast, but if you are keen to learn more about any of these things, please just get in touch with us and we'll set up a time. So to set up a peer review task, what happens is you go to the tasks and homework area and you click on assign a new task, and you choose peer review, which is this final option at the end here. So I click select, and it comes up in the same way that it would when you're setting a task. And so you click on who, you click on the class, you click on what, and so say we wanted to assign that speaking lesson we just made as a peer. Probably you'd want to do something more than that, but this is just an example. Or you could assign one of our pre-built speaking lessons, and this works with other activities, not just speaking as well, so it can work really well with writing too. Click on confirm selection, and then it comes up with the choose the peer review question. So we've only got the one question in there, so we can click on that one as a peer review. If you had more lessons, if you had a lesson with more questions in it, I'd recommend that you pick carefully the questions you want to make peer reviewable, because it does take quite a long time for the students to go through the process. So you wouldn't necessarily set the whole lesson as peer review. I'd sort of pick your questions carefully. You then confirm selection. You set the time frame. You can choose how many answers you want each student to review. So, for example, if you set this to 2, it would mean that each student would review 2 other students' answers for that particular question. And you can either choose the star and comment function or just the star function. I think the star and comment function is a really rich way of getting the students to actually react to what their peers are talking about. And what that means is when the students have completed their speaking activity, then you can it will automatically start randomly allocating them other students speaking to listen to, and they will be able to listen to what the students have recorded and give them feedback. Or in this sort of scenario where you might not be able to do speaking in class, you might actually sort of change it up a bit, and when they're doing the peer review process, you might actually get them to respond to what the students have said, like give their opinion about it in the target language, or agree or disagree with it. So the peer review tradition was created for students to give feedback to other students. But I think in this scenario where we want the students sort of interacting more, and they can't necessarily do that in the classroom, then the peer review is a great way of as we can use it a bit creatively to get them responding to each other. So that's another option there. And like I've said several times, if you do want a bit more information on that, we're more than happy to sort of run a session on peer review in more detail. So that's using the speaking with peer review. Now as I said, I've been having a think of other ways that you can use EP to recreate traditional speaking activities. So the first one that comes to mind is speed dating. And I know speed dating was a favourite of mine in the classroom. I used to love doing speed dating with my students of all levels. And I was trying to think how you could use EP to run a kind of thing similar to speed dating. And obviously we can't do it exactly the same. But what I thought is that what you could do is create a smart lesson. So I'll go through the process again. So click on create a smart lesson, add in a question, and you initially would ask the students, the instruction would be, use the voice recording component. So the instruction for the students would be record yourself asking some questions that you would like to ask other people in the class. For example, you could word the instructions how you like, and it could be in relation to a topic, or it could be more random, sort of spontaneous questions. And then you could put in your audio recording component and click on done. And I think we can probably put in a few audio recording components that you might want the students to upload three different questions, for example. And then this is not how we would normally do it, but I was trying to think really creatively about how we could sort of reinvent some of these traditional activities. And then, so you ask your students to record some questions. You'd then save that question and you'd call it speed dating questions, for example. And we'd then exit the content editor, save it again, and assign this to the students. And so what they need to do is they will receive the question, they'll receive the task, and then they record their questions. So we save that, we'll give it a name, we'll call it speed dating. So that's the first step. So this process has a few steps in it. And then what you would do is you'd need to go in and extract their recordings. And so to do that, you go to assign tasks and homework, and I'll do it through the sample report here. But to download a recording, you just go to responses, and you can go into a speaking question, and you just click on open file, and then you can download the file there. So click on download, and then you could then download the questions that the students have recorded, and it would take a few minutes to do that. And then you could create speaking questions where you upload each person in the class's question. So you have, say, 3 questions per class member, and then you assign that to the students, and then they all have a lesson with questions generated by every person in the class. They work through those questions, and it's the best way I can think of recreating speed dating through EP. So essentially, they're listening to questions from everyone in the class, they're recording their answer, and then you could even set it as a peer review task where students are then going and listening in to what their class members have answered to their questions. So it's quite a long process to set it up, and it could be over several days that you actually set it up, but it could be a really cool way of trying to sort of reenact speed dating in EP. Another activity I thought of for sort of speaking in using EP that's a little bit different is, and this is if circumstances allow, it may not be the case if you do have sort of very strict restrictions with social distancing, is you could make the speaking into a quiz. So you could have speaking questions playing from your computer at the front of the room, and then you have the class divided into 2 teams. They have to they hear a question, the first person to put their hand up answers the question in the target language and gets a point to their team if they answer it correctly. And the team with the most points wins. Another idea I had, I know a popular speaking activity is sort of spotting the difference between 2 images and describing images and trying to pick out differences. So another activity I thought about was you could have set up a question in EP with 2 similar images, and then have a voice recording component where the students have got to describe the images and describe the differences between the 2. And then finally, another activity I thought of was, and a colleague suggested this one, agree or disagree activity, where you have a statement. So if you made a question slide, if we add in a question and put in a statement, so for example, vegetarianism is the key to solving climate change, or a controversial statement, and this is probably more suitable for senior level students. So you could put your statement into the question. So we'd drag over our text box. We could say, give your opinion on this statement. And then you could pop your statement into the question. And then just sort of put in some formatting as well, and we could change this to italics and put it center align it. And then and obviously you'd want them doing this in the target language. Then you could drag over your voice recording component and then assign this to the students. So we'll put in German or French or Japanese or whatever, assign this to the students. They then have to give their opinion on the statement, without saying whether they agree or disagree. You could then assign that as a peer review task, and the students could listen into what their peers have said about that particular statement and say whether they agree or disagree with them. So it's once again using the peer review function in a slightly different way to how it was originally designed. So that's just another idea of sort of reimagining a speaking activity that you might do in the classroom and putting it onto EP. So all of these would require a bit of preparation from your end, because these aren't pre-built activities in EP. They're sort of ones that you would need to use EP Studio for. But as you can see, the EP Studio tools are very easy and quick to use. Now, there's one other tool that is worth showing in EP Studio for creating speaking questions, and then I'll sort of try and sum up because I'm aware of the time. So I'm just going to save this one, and we'll call this opinion, and then we'll exit out of here and add in another one. We've also got what we call our uploading component, and what this does is it allows students to upload a file, so maybe a video or an audio recording, so we can set that to video or audio, and so you can set a speaking task where the students can actually upload a video or an audio file as well. So that's another cool one for practicing speaking, and actually any of the activities I've spoken about could be done with the uploading component rather than the voice recording component. So they're kind of they're quite similar, and once again you just drag over your instructions and put in the task that you wanted the students to do there. And one idea I did have, which is quite a cool one for students working remotely, is you could ask the students to all make a little video or a recording about something. You could then set that as a task. You could then download what the students have recorded and then use that as a listening comprehension activity for your students, either set with questions through EP or played through a projector at the front of the class, so you can actually use what the students have recorded to generate the activities. So those are just a few ideas of ways that I thought you could use EP speaking a bit creatively to work in the environment that we're in currently. But of course, if you haven't done so already, please do start with trying our existing speaking activities. There are a lot there. The speaking lessons have got a lot to them. That would be a great first step. And then some of our users who I know who are experts already in the platform, who are with us in the session, would be great if you were keen to try out some of those other activities we've talked about and see how it goes. And if you would like more information on any of the things we've talked about, please don't hesitate to ask. We can book in a session. So I'll sort of finish my section there. I feel like I've talked a lot, but we'd love for you to ask any questions that you might have in the chat, and we might share some of the questions that have come up. But while people are putting some questions in the chat, I thought it would be nice just to share. Share a video. If you want to stay around and watch, you don't have to. You're welcome to go and leave the session now. But I'll put a video on of one of our wonderful teachers in Victoria, just talking about how she uses the EP platform. So if you're keen to sort of hear from other teachers about what they're doing, and this teacher talks about all different ways of using the platform, so not just speaking, but just sort of lots of different ways. So I'll play the video now, and please feel free to pop any questions in the chat, and we'll answer them now. So the video should start.
Hi, my name is Claudia Russo. I have been teaching for 27 years, and my main subjects that I teach are Italian, English and legal studies. I am currently teaching at a co-educational school in Melbourne, Victoria, in Australia. And even though we are experiencing unprecedented times at the moment, I'm happy to say that remote learning for us in Victoria, and particularly at my school, has been quite rewarding for both my colleagues and my students. And that's simply because of Education Perfect. I have been able to engage my students even further online by using this platform. Not only are they able to complete set work on Education Perfect, revise learning that has happened in class, consolidate any grammar that they may have learnt, but they're also able to partake in formative and summative assessment on Education Perfect. And for this, I'm very grateful for. We have adopted Education Perfect at our school for the last 5 years, and we've watched it evolve and develop even further into quite an engaging platform. I enjoyed in particular because I am able to assess students whether they're in the classroom or at home. And recently I have devised some exams for my senior students, as well as smart lessons for my junior students. With exams being on Education Perfect, you go to the inbuilt assessment and you can create your own exam. I have used my own recordings, I have used student recordings, I've also used YouTube clips and video clips that I have created, all within that platform. It is fantastic. I cannot recommend it highly enough. If you've never heard of Education Perfect or you want to use it, have a go at it. You won't regret it. It's great, especially now during distance learning. Thanks. Have a great day. Cheers.
Okay, so I'm just going to, hopefully that video, you found it useful. I'm just going to answer a question that's come up. So the question was, how do you download the student files and from if they've uploaded them? So I'll just go through that again. I'll go into screen share mode. And if you do need to go, please feel free to do so. The rest of the webinar will be answering questions, but you're also welcome to stay and listen to the questions that people have. So what you need to do to download the files, I'm just going to go out of this editing area where I was before. And then if I go back to the home page, what you do is go through to the tasks and homework area. And then if you've assigned a task, it will come up here with a little panel that you've assigned the task. But I'm going to just click on sample report to show you. And then if we go into the lesson, you go to the responses tab. And then you go to the question. So I'm going to click on the speaking question. You click on the student's name down the left-hand side. You click on open file. And then you click on those 3 dots there and download. So it is quite a long process, and we are actually trying to improve the workflow here. That's one of our engineering team's sort of projects going forward. But that's how you can download the files for external moderation if you need to, or if you want to use the student files for some of those activities that I mentioned. What I'm going to do also, we had another question asking about the link to register for access to EP. So I'm just going to pop that link up again. So if you don't have an account and you'd like to set up a teacher account, you can just sit on that, click on that link and you can fill out the form to access an account. And accounts are free for teachers. So yes, you can go for it. So if anyone's got any other questions, please feel free to pop them in the chat. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining us. It's been absolutely wonderful to have you. And Joe, I don't know if you'd like to sort of add anything in there before we finish off.
Yeah, I'd love to. Thank you ever so much, Philippa, for giving all these lovely practical strategies on using EP to promote speaking in the COVID secure classroom. It's been fascinating. I particularly like the peer review ideas and the speed dating suggestions. It was very, very useful. And as you say, there's lots of people in the chat who have who've been using EP for a while, as well as some newbies as well. And I think it's been a really helpful session. So thank you so much for this collaboration that we've had together today. It's been fantastic. I'm sure people will enjoy watching the recording back as well, and be able to remind themselves of all the great ideas that you've shared today. Just let you know, Philippa, I can't hear you. I can't hear you right now. I don't know if everyone can hear you, but I can't hear you right now.
Okay,
just let
sorry.
you know.
I think I might have been on mute. I think I was on mute.
No
yeah.
worries.
Sorry about that.
Sorry.
So I was just
That's
saying,
all
enjoy
right.
the holidays for people who are about to go on holiday, for Australian and New Zealand teachers, or some already are. So enjoy the holidays, and thank you so much for joining us, everyone. It's been wonderful to have you. And feel free to ask more questions. We'll be here. We'll be here to answer them if people want to stay and answer any more questions. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of your day or evening.
Thank you ever so much, everyone, for all your lovely comments in the chat. That's really great. We very much appreciate your feedback. It's great, and we're delighted that you found it useful. Joanne's asked a question about pricing. If you get in contact with EP directly, then they'll be able to explain to you how the pricing structure works.
Yeah. Some people are saying with certificates, if you're having issues with certificates for whatever reason, just if you can email us or email me or email our support email address, we'll get those sorted in the morning. We'll get our events team onto that first thing if you're having difficulty for whatever reason. So sorry about the certificates, but we can follow that up if you just email that through. That would be great. But if you should be able to download a certificate by clicking on the certificate icon, but if that's not working, then please do email us through.